Welcome everyone to the October 5th, 2025 Whole Health Forum. We are introducing Simon Brown today to the forum. Simon has been studying, practicing, teaching Feng Shui, macrobiotics, and all things enjoyable for life for his entire life, even though he only takes credit of being a teacher for the past maybe 35 years. Ever since he's a young child, as his older sister said, he has been inspiring, instructing, and becoming a guide for many people. Even if those people didn't know that they were learning from Simon, he's been an influential individual. And as he's been studying Feng Shui and personal empowerment and health, he learned quite a few techniques and methods to really improve his well-being, his family's well-being, and people who are interested in learning from him about how the art of placing yourself in your home, in this particular environment, and the design of the interior of your home can be very effective in keeping you healthy, increasing your health, and allowing you to be successful in those things that you really want to do with your life. And I'm sorry also, as you've joined us for the confusion. I promise that by the next time we send out an email for the next Whole Health Forum, that there won't be as many confusions about how the link works and how to find yourself at this place. I also want to remind everybody that at the last Sunday of every month, we are doing a coffee or cooking clutch as opposed to a coffee clutch with Clara Levine, who is in Israel at the moment. And as she travels worldwide, she continues to devote her last Sunday of the month to this cooking clutch. Also, we will allow this meeting to continue past the top of the second hour if anybody wants to continue a conversation. I can't guarantee that Simon or I will be here at that time, but anyone else wants to stay around and have a conversation about whatever is of interest, you're certainly invited to do that. So here we are, Simon Brown in Lisbon, Portugal. He is here to help us understand a little bit about how you can use Feng Shui to improve the quality and health of your life, of you, of your family. Simon, do you want to say anything else as way of introduction?
No, that was great. Thanks, Lenny. But what I will do is just luckily William Spear's here. So Bill Spear was the first person who introduced me to Feng Shui way back in 1990 when I was running the CHF. And Bill was very enthusiastic and thought, it'd be great to do a class. I already knew Bill for many years through macrobiotics, so I kind of trusted him. But in my mind, I thought, gosh, we'll be lucky to get 10 people. It's a bit of an obscure topic. But to my surprise, the class filled out really quickly, and it just went on from strength to strength. And through those courses, I think we were the first people to put on any kind of educational program in Europe. I'm not sure what was going on in America that time. I think there was some things in New York, but we were putting Feng Shui on the map very early on, and so thanks, Bill. That was a lovely connection, and of course, I think as many of you know, Bill's written a really good book on Feng Shui and been involved as well, teaching and so forth. Um, so
So let
should
me just ask you, Simon, if you could
yeah.
just start by defining what is Feng Shui anyhow, and what how do you use it to
Well, I've
improve
got
your
some
life?
slides to help with that, but literally, Feng Shui means wind, water. We are mostly water ourselves, two-thirds of us. We're breathing, so air's coming in and out. Um, and that water isn't static inside me. It's a flow. It's flowing into me every time I drink. I'm getting liquid in. It's coming out again. Um, and two-thirds of the surface of our planet is also water. The air is humid. It contains lots of water. We can see it in clouds. It rains. It comes back down. Then it evaporates back up. So life, we could say, two of the key components are air and water, wind and water, and on top of that, we'd say in Feng Shui, sunlight. But we'll have a look at that. Does that
So
help?
I've made you a co-host so you can
Okay.
share your screen.
Okay. Shall I do that? Shall we get going? Okay. So,
Excellent.
if anyone has any questions as we're going along, feel free to leave them in the chat. I might not see them, but I think Lenny will voice them for you. It's just sometimes when I'm sharing the screen, I can't always see
No, you
what's,
don't have to. Well, Clara and I will help
yeah.
manage that.
All right. Okay. So, we're going to look at a particular aspect of Feng Shui today, which is how it works with health. Um, and so, Feng Shui and health together. And I'm going to, first half is going to be more the big ideas, and then the second half will be very practical things you can definitely do in your home. So, as I was just saying to Lenny, we are nature. Nature's flowing through us, and I think that's an important thing to remember. Uh, we are literally a flow of nature. It's not a static thing. And in our case, we have our outside skin, which we feel defines us. But there's many skins inside us, the skins of our lungs or arteries or digestive system. Every organ has a skin. And you could break it down to every cell, which has a membrane, oil or water membrane, which is its own skin. And all these skins help channel the flow of nature, primarily water, but also air, flowing through us. And when we get, so we have many skins inside, helping move nature through us in a way that keeps us healthy. Then we get to our outside skin, but most of us are putting on a second skin with our clothes, and we might have several layers depending what time of year it is. Then we have another skin, which is, if we're indoors, the walls of the house we're in. Um, and a bit like the human body, many homes will have walls to a room, but then also walls to a corridor that connects that room to another room, just like we have this ability to move things through the skins of our own bodies. So our home, in a sense, becomes an extension of ourself. Just so we could say clothes and home, but it could go further than that. People might really identify with the city they live in. Oh, I'm a Londoner or I'm a New Yorker. And the boundaries of the city have almost become another metaphorical or psychological skin for them. In the old days, people didn't travel much, so they might hardly leave their village or town, and so they were very much entrenched in that in particular environment. So we have the idea that we are nature and that nature's moving, but it's more than that because it's moving in a cyclical, rhythmic, pulsing way. It's not just the flow like you see a river flowing past. Um, our body is let me just skip ahead. Full of different cycles. Right now, we can probably feel our pulse and our heartbeat is moving. It's a cycle. We're breathing in and out to our lungs. That's another cycle. But it goes on and on. Every day, we're probably sleeping at night. That's another cycle. Just walking, we're moving one leg in front of the other, then reversing that. Muscles are tensing up, other muscles are relaxing, and this sort of rhythm of tensing, relaxing of our muscles that helps us walk is another cycle. dancing, swimming. We could go on and on. Qigong is a kind of Chinese way of focusing different cycles with breathing and meditation to help get into that sense of our own cycles. Activity and rest would be another one. Interestingly, we could say that sex and conception comes from, at some point our parents coupled up. There was some rhythmic movement going on until our father's seeds reached our mother's eggs, and out of that we developed. So there was a sort of rhythmic, cyclic, pulsating movement that precipitated or led to our own creation, initiated it, that's probably a better word. So we're full of cycles, but we're living in an environment that is also cyclical. Our solar system has three big cycles, the day cycle, the lunar cycle, and the seasons. And that means that we have this sort of cyclical being living inside other big cycles, and therefore we're very subjected to those cycles. Our own cycles are mixed up with the cycles of other people, with nature, with the solar system, and so forth. So we every this is a sunset image, but every day we have our sunrise, sunset, the movement of the sun, which is very strong in us. We call that the circadian rhythm. We have the lunar cycle. This is the full moon, and then that lasts about 29, 30 days. And then we have our seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter, that take us around that. So what we then look at is how does that affect the human? And in China, then this idea of above us, the sun and the stars and the moon, sending energy through our body all the way down to our feet into the ground. But remember, that's a cyclical energy. The sun's not always out, it's coming and going, the moon's changing, full moon to new moon, and even the kind of position of the sun in the sky through the year is going to change according to the season. So there's big cycles affecting this sun, which is the yang qi, how it moves through our body. Meanwhile, the earth, which we're standing on, she has her own chi, which is coming up our body, and that's more consistent. It doesn't have the strong cycles of the yang. And what you could say from this is that the yang, the sun, is the driver of our day. Okay, it's sunrise, time to get up. If we're farmers, off to the fields, do as much as we can before it gets too hot. Then the midday sun comes, we have to stop, have a break. But then again, there's a rush to complete everything before the sun set, and once we lose the light, we can't do anything. Same thing with the seasons. If you lived in a northern European country or Northern America, if you didn't get your harvest done in the autumn and get all the food in before the snows came, you were finished. Your family wouldn't survive the winter. And so we had a lot of pressure around these cycles. They kind of helped us survive, succeed, or perish if we couldn't manage it. So we could say the sun's the driver, but the earth has a different role. It's the nourishing of the human body. It's the yin, which is pretty much there all the time, and that allows us to be nourished and recover. So typically, sun's out, we're active, busy, using up energy. Then it's nighttime, sun's gone away, we're sleeping, resting. We may have more energy from the moon and the stars, but also the earth. Of course, going back far enough, we'd be sleeping, lying on the earth as well. So we could apply that sun idea to the yin yang symbol. The white gets stronger as we go up towards the midday sun, and then darkness comes along until it peaks in the nighttime or the winter. Same thing if we apply the five elements, we would have water, wood or tree, fire, soil or earth, and then metal. So we have different ways of describing cycles, and we can put them together into this one, which is the five elements with the yin yang symbol behind. What's happened now is so far I've been talking about cycles, and it seems, as far as we can tell, that's how things started off with yin yang and the five elements, that it was primarily used to create calendars so that farmers would know when to plant their seeds, when to harvest, and so forth, or at least to plan ahead. Um, but at some point, people realized that the mountains had a sunny side, the southern side in China, and the shady side, the northern side. The sunny side was like the summer, the shady side was like the winter. And at that point,
Can you
time,
hear me, everyone?
yes,
Can
yes,
anybody hear me?
yes. At that point, um, because we've been talking about cycles, which is really how we measure time, how many days before we meet up or how many months before we get to a certain point in the year. Um, the at this point with the mountain, then it was combining time and space. So what you'll see is directions on here with everything we've talked about according to the time. So the southern side of the mountain would connect with the summer solstice, the full moon, the midday, and so it goes around to the winter, midnight, new moon, winter solstice, and that would be associated with the north. So what we have here is, and this was all happening maybe 700 BC. A lot of it was starting 2000 to 3000 BC. Um, it's a little hard to tell because of so much time, but what was happening here was a kind of energy map of time and space together. And it became the basis for Feng Shui. We call it the Bagua. But Chinese medicine and everything else, all the calendars and astrology, all started to come out of that. So what we're looking at is essentially a clock. So that would be midnight, morning, midday, afternoon, back to nighttime. A lunar calendar, new moon, a waxing moon, full moon, waning moon, and back to new moon. And a seasonal calendar. So we'd have the winter coming into the spring, up to the summer, late summer, autumn, and then back to the winter with directions for each one. And what we could then do is put this chart, this map, on top of a human body. And what we can see then is, and if anyone here has studied Chinese medicine at all, or macrobiotics in that sort of more medical way, we can see why different organs were associated with different energies. So if we go back to our midnight, new moon, and winter solstice, the yin, which is all grouped under the name water in the five elements, it's over the part of the body that would relate to the bladder and reproductive organs, and those would be connected to the kidneys at the back. So you can see how all those organs then normally you'll find in a chart underwater energy. If we're coming up on the body, on our body, it'd be on the right side. We could say that this wood energy, the sunrise, waxing moon, spring equinox, the east, is all appearing over our liver and gallbladder area. Or if we go to the top, we can see that the fiery energy of the summer and the full moon and the midday, that's all appearing over our heart. If we go to the southwest earth energy, if we kind of bring that in, it's going through our stomach and pancreas and spleen. The metal energy would come to our, this is the autumn sunset energy, come to our intestines, but it would also, we could relate it to our diaphragm and therefore the movement of our lungs. And so it works very well in many ways. I'm surprised how many different ways you can see that it works. So if someone's thinking of doing a liver cleanse or a detox, apparently the most popular time is the springtime. So we have this springtime. In theory, the morning would be even better. And the liver is connecting up to that springtime energy. A lot of people, I I notice, fall in love around this spring summertime when the energy's up here, around the energy of the heart. It's the most popular time still to get married, May, June. Remember, in the some we think of summer typically in the West as August, but the summer solstice is actually in June, and then the winter solstice is in December. So if we go by marriage, certainly it works there. When we look at our own metabolism, our metabolism peaks when the sun's at the top. So this sun energy, you could say, coming down through the body to our small intestines, is when we're best able to digest food. When I was young, I wouldn't relate to this at all. But I think as people get older, they do notice it's a bit easier to digest a big lunch than a big dinner. And now we know that science allegedly tells us that our metabolism's increasing at that time. But we can go on for ages looking at that. There's in the UK, more babies are born in the autumn, which means that they had to be conceived in the winter in this water energy. Our educational time starts in this metal energy of September. That's when so many of our courses start. And you'll find that we're hugely connected to this chart in our body and in our lives, really. But apart from putting this chart on our body, we can also orientate it over the floor plan of our home. As I was saying at the beginning, our home is like a third skin. If our clothes are the second skin, the home's our third skin. And so when we do that, we can orientate the water part of the chart, the north, with compass north, where north really is. And we can see, okay, so here on this particular one, lots of windows on this side facing southeast, so it get lots of morning sun, lots of sun through the morning, and then probably after midday, these are all solid walls, nothing at all. So it would be a lovely apartment for a lot of that upward springtime morning energy, uh, but we'll be missing the rest. And if someone was thinking of buying an apartment, that might be useful to know at the beginning, depending on how we want to live in that apartment. From a scientific point of view, the morning sun is slightly blue in its frequency. And as it goes into our mind, it acts as a bit like caffeine. It's a stimulant. It motivates us. It gets us ready. We're more active, planning the day, doing stuff. After midday, the sun progressively becomes more yellow and orange, and that helps us relax. It's calming us down, getting us ready for sleep. So then we can apply to emotions and many different things we can use with this chart to understand life and then connect it back either to our own body or to our house. So, for example, if we put this chart on our body, passion, emotions, love would all come up by our heart, but so would stress. Um, and then we could go around the whole clock. But same thing in our house, the south part, the sunny part of our house, the south part of the house, the part of the house that's getting light at the middle of the day will, in this theory, help us have more of those kinds of energies, more of those emotions, more of those feelings. Lenny said that probably after 20 minutes, good to stop, which I'll just come out of sharing. And does anyone have any questions on what we've said so far at this point? Any thoughts?
If you do, please just add them to the chat.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'd like to know, Simon, in your own home,
Mm,
what you've done in terms of design. I don't know if it was probably not convenient to walk around, but maybe you could tell us something about how you have designed. You have a young child and you have a study. So where have you positioned these rooms in the directional side of your house?
yeah, so the house, one side southwest and the other side's northeast. The northeast gets a bit of morning sun and then not really any direct sun. And then after, I guess about 12, the southwest side progressively gets more sun. One thing I think you've all noticed is that in the summer, the sun's very high in the sky. So fortunately, when it's hot, it's not coming into our house so much. But in the winter, when the
Hey,
sun's
talking to me.
low in the sky, it becomes very it really penetrates. In this room, it can go all the way across to the other wall and shine on the wall, lighting up the whole floor. So it's a huge amount of sunlight at the end of the day. But that would be more of, because of the time of day that we get it, more of that earth metal end of the day, similar to the autumn kind of energy. And it is stronger in the autumn and winter when the sun's lower in the sky. So right now it's really energizing the room. Anyway, to answer your question, Lenny, then the kitchen and the living room and one of the bedrooms is facing that direction. The other bedrooms are facing the other way, which was much cooler and darker and probably better for good sleep if someone was having problems sleeping.
So did you arrange the house, or when you moved there, it was already designed like that, or how have you
Yeah,
used these principles in your own design, interior?
so it was already designed and built. It was new, but we'd looked at about 30 to 40 houses before we got to this one. And it's taking into account all these things. What's the light like? Because sometimes it's facing a sunny direction, but there's a huge building in the way, and you're in the shadow of that building. It's a lot of the, if you're moving, a lot of the looking for a new house is based around the trying to get the orientation so that you're going to get that really nice cycle of light through the day. It's great if you have windows one side to the other because you can get morning sun and afternoon sun on different sides of the house. But it's all helping our own circadian rhythms if we're spending times indoors. Otherwise, since moving in, we've obviously done lots of things, painted rooms, used lots of plants, which we'll talk about today, images and so forth, decorated the house. All right.
Great. Yeah, why don't you continue?
Yeah, let's continue. I'm going to share again. So we're going now from the big ideas into a bit more of the specific practical health thing. So I think where Feng Shui you can make a really strong case is that um, a lot of our health is dependent on our state of mind and emotions. Long-term stress, pessimism, negative thinking, anxiety hugely impact on our health. I don't know if anyone read the Nun study and the other ones that came after that, but it suggested that the difference between being optimistic and pessimistic would either extend or shorten our life by 15%. So if you're expecting to live to 80, but you were able to maintain a really optimistic outlook on life, you would live another 12 years on top. And it's about the same difference that research suggests food makes. The studies on vegans, particularly the Seventh-day Adventists and things, had similar results. But to me, if you can put the two together, great. Loads of research about stress and the effects, the adverse effects stress has on us. We'll look at why. I'll explain that more. So, so I think it's well accepted that our state of mind, our emotional well-being affects our long-term health. At the same time, there's a wealth of evidence that's showing how our environment affects our moods, thinking, and state of emotions. So when you put those two together, it kind of makes sense. If you have a healthy home to live in, you're probably going to feel better, think better, particularly more positive and optimistic, and be happier. In which case, all the research is suggesting you'll get ill less, uh, probably 70, reduce the risk of hospitalization by 70% and extend your life by 15%. So that's the thinking, that's the evidence, let's say. And why does this happen? So we have in our nervous system two branches, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system allows us to do our healing functions, relaxation, creativity, resting, sex, and our sympathetic nervous system is for the fight or flight, survival, action, movement. I think I said this before, but I'll try and use a different example. If you were out hiking and encountered a wild bear that looked kind of hungry, your sympathetic nervous system is going to get you out of that situation. Is going to help you fight off the bear if that's what you have to do, run to safety, climb up a wall, and whatever it is you need to do to get out of the situation with the bear. And whilst we're doing that, our body will switch off our immune system, will stop digesting food. Most of our brain's going to stop functioning. Where our blood glucose will shoot up because everything's just going to be predicated on survival. That's it. And so that makes sense. We need all the energy we can for our muscles and other things. And there's absolutely no way we could be running away from a wild bear, wondering what to eat and for dinner that evening or what film to watch or at night. The brain just wouldn't let us allow us to do that. It's just going to focus on, where's the escape route. Unfortunately, our body can't tell the difference between real stress and what we might call imaginary stress. And so oftentimes we're thinking about the future, and if we're pessimistic, imagining the worst. Oh no, everything's going to hell, and next year I won't have enough money for this, or I won't be able to do that. Um, and as we do that, our body thinks this is stress, and it reacts the same way as if we were being attacked by a wild animal. It can't really tell the difference. So if someone opens an email and it's a nasty email from someone attacking them and they get really upset and stressed about it, they'll go into their sympathetic nervous system response. And maybe for a while it will be hard for them to think about other things. It'll just be, right in there on their mind. Um, how could this person do that? And that whole thing will take over for some time. Um, Later, either with the wild animal or the nasty email or whatever it is, if we can calm down, we can switch our parasympathetic nervous system back on. And when the body feels it's safe, when it's not going to be attacked or in danger or anything like that, we'll then switch into our healing modes, our creativity, the full brain will be available to us. We can rest, we can do all kinds of things that we can't do when we're in a traumatic situation. We have another problem is that it seems that lots of people are in a kind of state of low level stress often. It's sort of like anxiety and worrying about things. It may be not enough to sort of push up their blood pressure or blood glucose or heart rate, but it's still there. And this low level stress that can be ongoing, sometimes it becomes so common to us that it's almost like it's a habit and it's just there, even, and someone else might see it in us, but we can't see it in ourselves. And then if we are impairing our healing functions, our immune system, etc., over time we're predisposing ourselves to poor health. It may take many years, but of course, these things kind of creep up on us if we're not careful. What the research is telling us is that green spaces, trees, bushes, natural light, being on the earth with our feet and hands and so forth, help our parasympathetic nervous system engage. The opposite is modern concrete environments, modern cities. And particularly when you don't have natural light, someone working in a basement in a modern city is probably in the worst situation for not being able to engage their parasympathetic nervous system. The research is quite interesting, and I'll explain it. This is a little bit about stress. I think we're all quite good on stress. So, what are the influences in our home or environment? It's sunlight is a key one. Views, which we're going to look at. Colors. Maybe one of the biggest ones that we can easily do something about is plants and flowers in the home. Images can be very big, acoustics and artificial lighting. So ideally, we don't need the artificial lighting because we're getting enough sunlight, but at night time or the evening when we do, what kind of lighting is it? So let's have a look. We talked a lot about sunlight, but I think the main thing is try to not clutter up your windows with curtains and blinds and things that are half shut. Give yourself as much light as possible. And this is some research. If someone's very research orientated, it has the sources at the bottom. But this was in an office. They measured that the more sun there was on the floor, the more relaxed the people working there were. And also that people with more sunlight felt they had better job satisfaction, their intention to leave was reduced, and they reported a general sense of well-being. Um, and what was contributing to this, apart from the sunlight, was views of natural elements, trees, vegetation, plants, foliage. They were all found to, well, they say here, buffer, I would say reduce the negative impact of job stress on the intention to quit. So, if you have a room like this, that sun on the walls, sun on the furniture or the floor, that's great. You're going to be getting this kind of mood lifting sunlight, which will adjust the way you feel. You can enhance it further. Do you see? This is a low light place, but you can see some light, even so, is reflecting off this shiny wooden floor and over here, but not on the rug, not off the sofa, but yes, it is off this table, which I think has a kind of stone top. Shiny surfaces in low light spaces help move the light around and increase it. Mirrors, if you can find a strategic place on the wall to put one that catches the sunlight at a certain time of day, will double up that sunlight in that room. So anything shiny would have a powerful effect on the amount of sunlight you're getting. To have a think, if you need, if you're someone who normally has carpets, but you're moved into a low light home, maybe a polished floor is going to work better, particularly if it's a light color as well. I lived somewhere where the wood was kind of painted, had been painted a white kind of color, and then just with normal wax polish, it really lifted the whole energy of the room. Huge amount of extra sunlight was coming in on a sunny day. Okay, so views. Let me just skip ahead. So I mentioned this in the previous forum seminar. There was a hospital in Pennsylvania, and between 1972 and 1981, they had two wards. One ward had a view of nature, trees and bushes and grass. The other was just facing onto another building, so it basically just had a view of a brick wall. And each ward had 23 beds, and they started to monitor the difference of the outcomes of the patients in the two different wards. And what they found was that there was fewer, let's say, recovery issues in the ones seeing the views. They needed fewer painkillers, and they stayed there for a shorter time. So the recovery results between the two wards, seeing the trees and basically seeing a wall, was extraordinary, and you can imagine if we can do that to ourselves all the time we're at home through Feng Shui, we're sort of always giving ourselves this health boost if we can get it right. And so that precipitated a huge amount of research by different hospitals, and they confirmed the results. This one's a kind of interesting one, typical university one. They took their own students, took 120 people, and they kind of completely wired them up, skin conductance, heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing, etc., muscle tension, and tried to measure everything about these people. And then they showed them images of being in a urban environment and being out in nature, and measured the difference. And again, it's the same thing that the people wired up, their brain activity was also measured, were able to think better, their blood pressure was lower, their heart rate was slower, and many healthy changes had happened. Literally seeing the nature put them in a more healthy state than the ones that weren't. And it's kind of interesting because they weren't, for me, it's very interesting because they weren't even in nature. They were just seeing it. which so even if you do live in a city and you don't have nice views, if you can put nature in your own home with plants, but you had big images of nature on the wall, according to this research, it would have a similar, it would still have a benefit. You would still have a measurable health improvement.
It's interesting. Simon, I'd like to interrupt for just for a moment.
Sure.
You're referring to a lot of research that's confirmed a lot of the ideas and theories and practices that you've done. And you've also done a lot of consulting with different companies and individuals. And could you tell us something about how you have implemented some of these ideas with your clients and what the impact, what the benefit has been?
Yes. So the two biggest projects I ever worked on, one was with the Body Shop, that was owned by a woman called,
Anita,
yeah,
Anita
Anita.
Ruddocks. Uh-huh.
And she was kind of small, fiery woman, very high energy person. She'd hired me actually to do face reading because she was trying to do these campaigns that you're beautiful as you are, almost saying don't worry about the makeup and cosmetics. You know, if you've got wrinkles, it's great and it's just character. Anyway, she wanted to use, and I talked to her about Feng Shui, but she told me it was all rubbish and she wasn't at all interested. And so then she hired this big company to completely rebrand the shops. At that time, there was probably about 860 shops throughout the world. And so what they do is they do a test refurbishment on a couple of shops, measure the difference, and then see if it's gone up enough. If the turnover's gone up um, by the amount they wanted, then they'll roll it out. But anyway, this was a disaster. The turnover actually went down. And I think I was just in there to do the face reading work at the right time, and because I'd bugged her before about the Feng Shui, in sort of exasperation, she said, "Fine, Simon, go and do your Feng Shui, and we'll see what happens." So she teamed me up with the in-house designer, and then redid some shops. In that, we couldn't use directions or anything like that or sunlight because 860 shops all facing different directions in different cities and different kinds of street, that wouldn't work. So it was more limited to the interior design of the shops, and they had a dark green, so we used a much more fresh light green, which if you look at a plant, the new leaves tend to be a light green and then slowly get darker. So this young image was captured with the light green. Most of their customers were probably around 18, 14 to sort of early 20s, and that youthful. Then we made some of the shelves more curved, and these counters they would have in the middle of the shop, curvy, resembling more of a body shape, hips and the sort of curve of someone's back and so on, so that it was becoming much closer to more humanistic than the previous design was very linear. And then on top of that, we used natural materials. She was always kind of a bit ahead of the game on the environmental, but this was the body shop designer guy also saw it as an opportunity to put in all these refillable vats so people could just bring glass bottles in, fill them up, and pay for what they put in. And so they did two of those shops, and the turnover went up. Then they did a third one in Brixton, and that went up over 10%. And then they just rolled that out to the whole 860 shops all over the world.
The
Um,
turnover means the sales went in,
yeah,
the inventory turns.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, the sales went up by 10%, and which is massive when you kind of roll it out over so many shops. Um, The other big one was British Airways. They were building a whole new headquarters. They had lots of buildings, and they wanted to bring everyone into one new building. And the main theme that they asked me, the guy doing the whole project, Chris Byron, he said, we're really worried that this building isn't going to have a soul. It's just going to be like some kind of modern concrete and glass place, and everyone's going to hate it. And Simon, I want you to come in and use Feng Shui to give it a soul. He'd done loads of research all over the world on working practices and building design. So he was he was really, I learned from him as probably as much as he learned from me. And uh, but with the team, we started to look at all the decisions, the layout of the building. No one was more than 10 meters or 10 yards from a window with views of nature, lots of natural lighting. It was probably one of the first paperless offices in the UK. I think this was about 98 or 99. It was really weird going into it in those days and just seeing everything clean and clutter free. The ergonomics of the furniture, the variety. So it was also one of the first buildings to have internal Wi-Fi. We're so used to it now, but there was a time when buildings didn't have Wi-Fi and you had to plug in all the time. This one you didn't, so you could work in normal offices, or you could work in a canteen or a cafe. You could work. They had a sort of internal street with lots of trees and an atrium above. You could work anywhere, and there was an enormous number of meeting rooms that people could go to. Otherwise, it was all open plan. They really wanted people to connect more, and they had this problem where if I wanted to talk to Lenny, I would have to go up to my director, that director would talk to Lenny's director, and then it would come back. I couldn't just go and talk to Lenny, which, you know, was really getting in the way of progress. So they stopped all of that, got rid of all the secretaries, the computerized the sort of meeting system, and so the building had to serve that, had to be a building where all the people here we could just book a meeting room and meet there, or go to a cafe and meet there. It was hugely successful. People loved it. And they did a lot of extra things that I'm not sure you'd call feng shui, but again, it was just at the beginning of online shopping, and there was a supermarket in the UK called Waitrose. It's sort of slightly upmarket, a bit like Whole Foods in America. And at work, you could order all your shopping. The shop would then bring a basket round, drop it off by your car. So as you left work, you just put the shopping in the back of your car and off you went. So it sort of became um, the ideal place to work. After it was all finished, it got a huge amount of publicity, and they're very kindly. Chris Byron always mentioned the Feng Shui, so often that might be the headline: BA uses Feng Shui for its new headquarters. Um, but I used to go back there to help because they would have architects and other business people coming around to see it, because people were blown away by this office of the future, as it seemed. But it wasn't, you know, I think Chris Byron was right. It did have a soul, mainly through plants, and they spent a huge amount of money on art, and natural materials, so that it wasn't this sort of horrible faceless building that you can see. And
Great,
yeah,
great.
okay, so
Thanks.
yeah, you're
So
welcome.
you put these ideas into practice. Yeah, you can continue
Mhm.
through your presentation and show us some more of the ideas you
Well,
have.
so this would be a sort of water and some trees. It's in Copenhagen, so it is in a city centre environment. But just having this extra space really helps in Feng Shui, where we have this. Oh, it's coming up. So maybe I'll just skip ahead and come back. No, I'll come back to it later. So this space, we would say, having a huge space in front of you like this, or a view, you could imagine being in this apartment. It feels like you've got somewhere to go. you can move forwards unrestricted. Whereas if you're facing another, as so often happens, particularly in old cities with narrow streets, you could just have another building right here in front, and we would say it affects your psychology, it affects the unconscious mind, so that after a while you might find that you're not taking on those big ideas anymore. You're not rushing into those big opportunities. You're feeling more limited inside yourself. This would be an example of a green. This is in fairly central London, but he's lucky enough to be facing into a small park with lots of trees, and that gives him his green. But he doesn't have the big view. His ability to move forwards in life is somewhat restricted, we could say. So what I want to say is, in Feng Shui and Chinese thought in general, as a human, we have these four animals around us and one inside. Uh, so they would say in front of us is this phoenix, a mythical bird flying in front. It can see ahead of us. It can tell us what's coming. Uh, it's our vision of the future, if you like, if we're moving forwards. And that mythical animal, it's activated inside us by space. I'm sure everyone's been up a mountain or a hill, got to a point where they've had an amazing view, stood or sat down and just contemplated it. But it's almost like we're getting bigger and filling in that vista, and our own mind is expanding into it. If you're in a forest, a very dense forest, you just don't get that. You get something else, the whole forest bathing tree experience, but your phoenix isn't going to be opened up. At the back, we have the tortoise. It's interesting, the human body, our eyes are at the front of our face, not on the sides. So we are probably more predatory from that point of view. Uh, our nose is at the front, our mouth is at the front, and our ears are forward facing. So all those senses are to the front of the body, and our muscles are structured so that we can run really fast going forwards, but we can go backwards, but not nearly as quickly or with as much force. So as a forward facing person, we're always looking for that what's in front of us. But it means we're very weak from the back. We're very vulnerable. If someone was to attack us from behind, even our arms, we can't defend ourselves at all well. We're really struggling. Our shoulder joints, we can't, I can't, I couldn't sort of defend myself at all well, but I can from the front. So we have ribs and bones and spine, which try to give us some protection, but in Feng Shui, we feel we can do more than that and use a wall or a mountain or a big tree or something that's solid behind us to give us that sense of protection. And if we can do that, then our unconscious mind will feel more relaxed, and it puts us more strongly into that parasympathetic nervous system state. On the left of us, they would say we have a dragon, and and on the right a tiger. They're both sort of defensive. They help the tortoise with our own defense, but they're different. The dragon is one, is, you might know people. Their best form of defense is attack. If they feel threatened, they'll just shout at you and start to attack you. Oh no, you did this or you did that, and um, the tiger is the opposite. It's very quiet but stealthy and lethal. It's that person that you keep pushing and they seem to be taking it but one day they'll snap and then something really unpleasant will happen. So we can replicate those in our homes. You know, the dragon could be a plant, for example, the tiger could be a piece of furniture. So we create a kind of U shape around us. The tortoise would be at least as high as our head or higher, but the dragon and tiger don't need to be, they could just be waist height, and not affecting our view of the room. So this would be an example. Sitting here with this rock behind or leaning against this rock, I would have this amazing view as far as I could see across the land. This would be, in that case, my dragon, and these sort of shrubs would be my tiger. It would be a very secure position, um, not only protected a bit from the wind and other things, but I think psychologically or unconsciously it would feel good. And if I were to meditate there for some time, maybe I would, get a different perspective on life and myself and what could happen in the future. I would have put myself in a different chi or energy. And as I reacted to that, something inside me might start to change. Back on a more practical level, lots of people work from home now. And even if we're just sitting at home, it's always best to have the wall behind. That would then become our tortoise, the dragon and tiger to the side, and the big phoenix in front. So lots of the time I go to people's houses and it's the opposite. So a lot of people tend to do this thing where they face the wall, and it puts them, at least psychologically, in a vulnerable position. There's stuff going on behind, they don't know. We're not protected behind, we can't see, our senses aren't very good from the rear. And so our parasympathetic nervous system isn't going to be fully engaged, which means that we're not going to think as well. We're not going to be as creative or productive. We won't have the same resources to our mind as we would if we were facing the other way. Uh, and especially, we would say having your back to the door isn't good. People do this because they say, like this one would be particularly bad. People do this because they say it saves space. But if you buy a table on caster wheels, you can just easily pull it out and sit behind. If you have wooden floors, I just put those sticky felt tabs on the bottom of the legs and they slide on the floor. You don't have to, it's only going to take a few seconds to pull the table out from the wall and you can sit behind it and enjoy all the positivity. So these would be the ones that we would recommend. This would be great. A view of the whole room, the view of the door, can see the windows, and maybe putting some inspiring image on this wall where the phoenix is would then help the person feel great in that situation.
What about a mirror?
Uh, Not well, it would seem bigger because your room would suddenly seem twice as deep, but you would just be seeing yourself, so it might not do it quite as well, but it'd be okay. You could experiment. It'd have to be a
But if
big.
you're facing the wall, you maybe have a mirror. If you had to have a room that was set up.
I don't think you have to ever have a room where you're facing the wall because I've always found a solution for that. But you could try and mirror that way, but you would be seeing yourself all the time. So I think,
Depending on the placement of the mirror. If the mirror is up high enough, you would just see the expanse.
yes, but you'd have to look up to see it, wouldn't you? Most of the time, you'd be looking ahead, and then there
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
the block. It's worth striving for. It does, we get very stuck with how things are and how we think they should be. But
Well, let me just interrupt one more time. There was a question recently about somebody who's working in a kitchen that was sort of dark and it was small, and they were wondering. Someone suggested maybe if a skylight could be added. What's your opinion about that?
oh yeah, skylights would be great. You can go a bit high tech. You can buy these fiber optic. You put a lens on the outside. It takes the light focuses it down into a fiber optic cable, and then you have another lens inside the room, so you get real sunlight that way. Uh, Otherwise, you'd have to get daylight bulbs and have lots of images of sunny nature.
Do you have any feelings about exposed beams, rafters that a lot of people like have wooden beams over their on the ceiling of their house? And there's
Um,
been controversy about how that might break up the energy.
yeah, I wouldn't worry about it if it's just holding the ceiling or the floor above. It's normal.
No, no,
Um,
just but exposed beams are different from
Yeah,
structural
but
ones.
even if they're exposed, if they're just holding the ceiling up, then there isn't much weight on them. It's very different. Occasionally I've come across you're in the basement of somewhere or the ground floor, and there's this huge steel beam going across covered in concrete, and it's holding up maybe 10 floors of wall, and that's a huge pressure, and being under that in Feng Shui, we're sort of putting ourselves in a compromising chi flow. But it's ceilings or roofs always have to have beams to hold the tiles in their place. So they're there anyway. Whether you cover them up or not, I don't think it makes an incredible difference unless they're very close to your head. But if you had a fairly high ceiling, and the little exposed beams that you might have, uh, then they probably won't. And even better if the corners are rounded off, they'll probably be fine. Okay, let's go on to something else. This is where a huge amount of evidence being built up. Um, if we expose ourselves to nature, inside or outside, it's the same things again. Uh, the ones I didn't mention before is that we have a higher pain tolerance when we're around plants. We can feel more present, we can focus better, we have more attention, we can restore ourselves quicker, we seem to work better, less stress, and we don't get tired as quickly. And apparently we're more likely to be social. So a lot of useful things from having plants. Remember, we are nature, so if we put other nature around us, we're sort of talking with that nature. Our nature's talking with the nature of the plants. Um, so just see if there's anything new that I haven't
What about the
already.
fish tank? A lot of people used to say feng shui people recommend fish tanks.
Well, funnily enough, I did read a research where they said that people felt calmer watching fish than playing with kittens or cats, dogs, and other animals. I found it a bit hard to believe, but anyway, that's the evidence suggests that it does have a very calming effect on us. Maybe it's going back to we're mostly water ourselves. Allegedly we evolved from water. The first 9 months of our life was in our mother's water. Water's very powerful in our life. It's in one sense, our evolutionary mother.
Yeah, you had the picture of an office with the desk. Do you have any pictures of a bedroom and the placement of the bed?
Yes, I think I went past that, but so this would be a little difficult because you would be, and it happens a lot, it's hard not to, but you're in the flow of energy from between the door and the window. So what we would do is put plants either side of the bed to try and create a kind of protective. Plants are good because they have their own chi field, a protective wall around when you're sleeping. Again, very vulnerable when we're sleeping, and we need to feel super safe when we're sleeping to get the most out of those sleeping hours, fully recover. Um, so these are just examples of plants. This is a cafe I used to like. They got really as far as they could. They had a whole plant wall with real plants, hanging plants, like a whole ceiling of plant, and then plants on most of the shelves. Interesting, you can see here that naturally, you can try this for yourself. If you go to a cafe that's half full, people will, of course, use the wall as their own tortoise and have the room in front. This guy doesn't, but if you look carefully, it's because he's with another person who's on the other side, so he's ended up in a less safe feeling place. Oh, this is the cafe again. So indoor plants, uh, um, the more we have, the better, really. Colors, there's a lot of research on colors, but so green, we see about 400 shades of green easily. If you ever go and out for a walk and you can see the side of a hill, just try and count how many colors you see. You know, it's amazing. The more you look, the more you see. And we're so good at seeing green because we would need to know as hunter-gatherers which tree do I run to that I know I'm going to be able to climb up easily? Which bush can I hide inside? Or just for food, which leaves are on the top of the root that I can eat easily and so on. So green is a huge evolutionary color inside us. But we've all grown up in different cultures, and cultures themselves have their own colors and color preferences. Growing up in London, you know, it's a red bus culture. Post box were red, and the telephone boxes, when we used to have them, were red. So it was sort of grey buildings, but dotted with red everywhere, and some of it moving. So I think I resonated with that red a lot. Uh, but like lots of Western cultures, black would be the funeral colors. Not in all cultures. Other cultures it's different. So we'd probably have a feeling about that color because of its association with funerals. And then there's personal. I was given a red toy bus when I was little, and I think I must have played with that for like intensively for about 3 or 4 years. But it may have predicated me to having certain emotional connections or associations with the color red. I still really like it when Felipa wears one of her red dresses, or my football team wears red, you know, so it sort of seems to become a dominant thing in my life, but for other people, it'll be a different color. And it's good to try and work out what you think are the strong color influences in your own life and see how you want to use that with your own clothing and decoration of your home. According to the studies, uh, red is a slight danger color, so we tend to be more careful when around red and better attention to detail. Blue, the sky blue, is more creative color. So in offices, sometimes they can tune the colors to try and get the best out of the people working there. This was an airport I worked on in Paris where we used colored glass. So the whole room, when the sun was coming from one side, would be red and then turn to blue or green when the sun moved in the day. This would be the luggage collection area. So same thing. You can see with the colored glass these big patches of light on the floor, and as the sun moves, they move. And if a cloud comes, they go away, and if the cloud passes, they come back. So it's a kind of it's in motion. It's moving. Things are happening. This is if you use many different colors, you can make something very stimulating. Uh, or here this would be maybe overstimulating for some people. Images are interesting. I used to go to these museums with the Feng Shui students back before the COVID days. But this is the same photograph of a woman. One has red lines across her, and one has a sort of turquoise with colored circles. If you look at the pictures, a lot of the students would get a different sense about the emotions of the woman. Normally, people would say the left one looks more serious, more severe, uh, and more concerned. The right-hand woman would look more relaxed, more imaginative, more friendly. But of course, it's exactly the same face. It's just the color difference. But it does show how quickly we react to, or how strongly we can react to colors, and they can kind of fool us sometimes. This would be symbols in abstract art. But what happens is when we're faced with a picture like this, our brain kind of goes into overdrive looking for patterns and meanings. If we're shown anything random, it's our natural instinct to what does this mean? What's happening here? What can I see? Um, and so it's very stimulating in that way. This would be much more relaxing because it's a familiar scene. It is green, it's nature, there's water at the bottom, there's lots of trees and foliage. So this would be a sort of a positive for our parasympathetic nervous system and healing.
Do you have
Our
any, yeah, I was going to ask about acoustics, like, like sound machines besides music and also like air purifiers or dehumidifiers that have some kind of a white noise in the background. And
so
any thoughts?
yeah, so a big irritant is if we have sound reflective surfaces, so this hard, shiny floor, this is a glass table. I'm sure you've been to a restaurant where they have stone floors, metal tables with glass tops, and it's just so noisy. And particularly with age, it's almost impossible to hear the person you're with. There's so much background noise. And we definitely don't want it in a bedroom. Apparently, if you had something like this, was your bedroom, and you had a bed in it with this kind of floor and walls, etc. Uh, um, if you're sleeping with someone who was snoring, that room would amplify the sound of the snoring about 3 times. Whereas if you had a sound absorbent room, the snoring sound just goes off to the wall and gets absorbed, but doesn't come back on top of the direct snoring. So rugs, carpets, beds, of course, themselves, headboards, soft headboards, big heavy curtains, tapestries, anything that's heavy and soft will be sound absorbing. Your wall behind you, Lenny, with the bricks, that's kind of sound absorbing in to a certain degree because it's porous, but it's um, it's not one flat surface. There's lots of bricks and with the grouting in between, it'll kind of rather than reflect the sound directly back, it diffuses it a bit. So that's also good. And your wooden ceiling's probably absorbent compared to some others. But the glass, the big glass window and door.
It's a screen actually, so
Oh,
it's not absorb. I mean, it's not reflective at all.
oh, okay. Well, that's good.
It's
Yeah.
just a porous screen.
Yeah. So you're fine there. And and Bill's bookcases also absorb a lot of sound, so they're great. Yes. Um,
People asked about if they're hard of hearing or colorblind or even hard of seeing.
hmm.
Do these factors impact also, or is it more if it's only visual or audible?
No, I think with the hard of hearing, you don't want a very echoey environment because if you've got music, someone talking, dog barking, it's very difficult then to pick out the different sounds and what's happening. The risk is it can feel like a sort of mush of sound. Um, so yes, hard of hearing.
Colorblind?
Sorry.
If it's colorblind and you
Well,
can't
then you
distinguish red, blue,
yeah, then you just want to
or red, green.
stick to the colors you can distinguish.
Okay.
Yeah. But the other one, if your eyes aren't too good, then you need good lighting, which, funny enough, is the next one. With the lighting, we've got we said before, the morning we have this slightly blue light from the sun through the atmosphere, evening slightly orange, and that's what's called the circadian rhythms, and that really gives the whole of nature on our planet a rhythm. Everything works by it. Everything uses that to try and plan its day, including us, and so we may as well use it. Working against it is kind of counterproductive, hard work for us. Um, and of course, if we have an east-facing apartment or house with the morning sun, we're going to get a lot more blue light, or if we're on the east side of our house. And then if we have a west-facing apartment or side of our home, that's going to get more of the orange light and be more relaxing. So you would naturally, therefore, use the east side for the more active things. Let me go back to all the way back to our original here. All these sort of sides of the chart is what we could say the active, the moving forwards. The top of the chart, these three are the social ones. The right of the chart is the more consolidation, being careful, keeping what we have, making the most of what we have, enjoying life as it is. That's happening there. And then the bottom are more the restorative, sleeping, but also philosophical, healing, all those qualities. So we can look at those in different ways. This is more about how the circadian rhythm works on us, but it's similar to what we looked at before. Some other things are it affects the flow of blood through our mind, which obviously makes a difference to our thinking and cognitive performance or psychomotor performance. Um, and cortisol secretion it regulates too. Um, so we can use this well, and there's lots of different researchers showing it. This is the morning sun, a bit blue. Here's the evening sun going more orange. At our home, we can then find that, at least in the old days, it's changing now, but most screens were the blue frequency. So, of course, at night, it's very confusing for our mind. It's expecting things to be going more yellow, but instead, suddenly we're looking full on into something blue, and it's telling us it's the morning again. But salt lamps, candles, I use a lot of these bulbs that have an orange LED filament in that they work well. Um, and what we want to be careful of is the old fluorescent lights. They were very blue and bright. And some of the modern LEDs can be on the blue side or very white. And if you have them on at night, the risk is that you're not going to get a good sleep because your mind's in wake up mode. So what I do is if you have lots of lights in a room, some you can use the orange bulbs in, and those are your nighttime ones switch on. If for something like cooking you need better lighting than that, then that would be the daytime, more bluish light or bright light. So that's everything I have on my presentation. Just to say, if you'd like to do a course, just let me know. I have one starting in November. It's a full training so that you become a Feng Shui consultant yourself. You could become accredited with the Feng Shui Society and add it to your career or just use it for yourself. I
So
think
how long is that course going to take if
it's a
somebody
whole
signs up?
year. Each class is 2 hours, a bit like this one. And there's breaks, so it's not full on the whole year. Um, I've been running it since in the online version since was it 6 years now, 7 years? It works really well. And I was surprised before COVID, I was hugely resistant to doing online teaching, probably the last person, but then I was surprised how effective it was and how people were actually getting better results than in the previous one. And I guess it makes sense because 2 hour classes, you can concentrate for the whole class. A whole weekend of classes, it's really difficult. And they're recorded. You can watch the recording, so you can see the same class 3 times if you were struggling over one bit of it. It's a much easier educational method.
Otherwise, it's live. It's not a record. You could watch a recording, but the class itself is a live interaction with
Exactly.
you.
Interactive, yes. Yeah.
I wonder if we could ask one of your teachers, William Spear, if he has any comments or questions,
Yeah.
or um, I put you on the spot, William Spear, but I know you always have some stories you like to share.
Well, not so much stories. First of all, thanks, Simon, for not just this, but for many, many years of encouraging people to look at this subject and broaden their understanding of health. It's really important. You've been out there for many years. I've been a little bit more below the radar, if you will, and credit your work and the books and circulation frequently. I
Thank
think
you.
it's interesting that on the chat, I recognize some old names and some old friends who are from the macrobiotic community. Susan Krieger is an extraordinarily gifted massage therapist in New York City. Old friend Bob Carr's here, macrobiotic brother, teacher. Um, Jacob, I know that I'm not sure if you're still here, but musician and longtime macro, wrote a great cookbook and talks more about music than most of us know anything. Um, Gordon, there's others here, all of them longtime practitioners and engaged in macrobiotics. And so that's kind of what strikes me most about the people in this group and those who we know one orbit removed, who know principle, who know yin and yang, and who studied with Micho or Herman or ultimately macrobiotics in the biggest sense with George Limosawa and Shizuko and so forth. And maybe some of those who studied astrology and had interaction with Takashi Yoshikawa, who I would consider among my teachers as well. The specific question then becomes one that I'm going to make a little bit more rhetorical, and that is how to really separate what is architectural psychology and environmental psychology, uh, behavioral studies, conservation philosophy, and those things which really deal with art and light and plants and sun, which are adjunct to the principal part of Feng Shui, which is really about yin and yang and really about connecting the bigger principle with all kinds of other aspects of health that we know. The subject itself of health is huge. I mean, there's how many here aren't engaged in some aspect of its study for their own and for the benefit of others? At the macro level, if we're looking at a study of health, I don't know any better way to look at it than yin and yang. I've looked at it scientifically. I've looked at it through spiritual traditions. I keep coming back to the magic spectacles of yin and yang. And so when we go into a business or you go into a person's house, I'm looking at that individual and the relationship of that individual to the space. And that part would then distinguish my exercise of whether or not this color is good or bad, whether this particular kitchen setup is right or difficult for a person. And even more microcosmically, if you will, I might relate to someone who's dealing with pancreatic cancer or bone cancer, which are more yang sicknesses, than someone who's having trouble with their lungs, with asthma, or with skin problems, which are more yin in nature. So because we know health, because we're using yin and yang, um, I would wonder, instead of talking as much as you have, and I'm sure you do this in your course, Simon, to be more specific about questions of health as they relate to an individual, and less general and broad, speaking about things like color and art and light. Those are environmental psychology pieces. We can study them without ever mentioning the term feng shui. But if you're going to bring feng shui into it without principle, then um, I don't know how people can exercise or be empowered to incorporate it into their own lives with their own health consideration. So I'll leave that as a rhetorical question. And I just want to comment one or two other things. I mean, I've spoken, as I'm sure you have too, Simon, and perhaps others, with people like Raymond Lowe and Joseph Yu, Joseph Yap. These are the real masters out there who are practicing classical feng shui with Loopans. Um, I think you could safely say that the real masters, when we're called masters of feng shui, I kind of just laugh at myself. I have a dog behind me. She doesn't come when I call her. I'm not a master of much of anything. And certainly the masters of feng shui haven't come out of China. They're just hiding in the mountains. The teachers among us are teaching so we can learn. And that's one of the best ways we kind of train ourselves, is to ask ourselves questions, and our students can ask us questions, which we have to research. So I've had those conversations with Raymond Lowe and you and Joe Yap and others, and they would always return to the unifying principle. By another name, they wouldn't call it macrobiotics, but because it's based in Taoism, because it's based around qi or ki, as Takashi Yoshikawa would with his astrological approach, um, it was really all about vibration. So the comment I want to make is that there's a skin that you started out with, which is a very interesting way to kind of bring us into an understanding of what that outer layer is about. And that's the skin of our own aura and vibration, and the spirit around us. And the spirit around us is the invisible world that is our ancestry, and that is the spirit that preceded us. Whether we can see it or not, we're still right next to those who've gone beyond the veil, behind the veil. And you've only had to spend a few years with Michio Kushi to know, and others who have that kind of spiritual vision, to know how real those ancestors are in our lives. That was the basis of feng shui originally, which was the siting of a tomb, the auspicious placement of a marker or a grave site, or a mausoleum, because they recognize that who we are never dies. So the feng shui masters were originally all about our ancestry and honoring them, so that our lives could be auspicious as long as we kept their lives auspicious. So we go back to that principle, whether you're a Jew or Christian or Hindu, every tradition has a way of honoring ancestry. Micho talked about it over and over again. Takashi Yoshikawa, sitting with him in New York, as I did so often, would always begin by honoring ancestry. That was the skin he wanted to make sure was in a peaceful place around him. So we have that aspect, and I don't know that it's really possible for us to ignore, or wise for us, I should say, for us to ignore that aspect of our health, our relationship to those who came before us. So that's just a contribution, but I'd be interested to hear other people's comments about the distinction between a principled feng shui using yin and yang, which empowers people to really take that as principles themselves and put them in their home, right? As opposed to a conversation around environmental psychology, around light and sun and placement, that's a little different than feng shui on a kind of purist level, shall we say.
Yeah, no, don't worry, Bill. In the whole course, of course, we have 60 of these classes, so we have loads of time do all of that. And but for what's the 1.5 hours so far, it's trying to get everything into a short time. The principles are certainly there with yin yang, five elements, trigrams, and they're the foundation of Feng Shui and how I would use it, and
Mhm.
how I think everyone else would use it too. Um, and then your other point, yes, of course, the whole spirit world is another bit. We in the course, even online, we can do different practices where we can feel chi and start to sense more of that in about ourselves and in our houses and buildings in general. So I think we start off with emotions and moods, but then work out of there. And I think a good tester for everyone to try is just go into different public spaces, cathedrals, could be a cafe, could be an art gallery, museums, and find somewhere to sit and just meditate for 20 minutes and then be very conscious of how you're feeling, what changes, moods, emotions, the patterns of thought, and then look around and see whether you can identify anything that might be contributing to that. And it's the way we pick up a real sense of our environment and its effect on us from our own experience. So theory and experience sort of go together and work with each other.
Yeah, and just to add in also, one of the Chinese feng shui teachers I studied with made a point to honor the Mexican Day of the Dead, but also our own. I don't know how much of it in Portugal you practice Halloween, but this porosity that exists between the spirit world and the physical world, between the energetics around where we live and the placement of our rooms and our house and our reality, she made a very strong point to recognize this time of year, the end of October, when we celebrate this putting on a mask, but also connecting with this spirit world, the ghost world, the world of our ancestors. And of course, in China, when they made paper boats and put the names of their ancestors and had a candle and really watched them transfer their energy down the stream, as we will transfer our energy through this life into the next dimension. And recognizing that this placement, this energetic of where we live, of how we live, of what we eat, the information that Simon's been sharing really is a reflection of our harmony, harmonious balance, our connections with energy around us, our ancestors, and our successors. And this is really an important part of our understanding in these sessions and these forums. And we really appreciate, Simon, you sharing how the seasons, the directions, the time of day, the time of year, these are all how we live and how we are affected. And we're so immune to it with air conditioning and central heating, with cars and planes. We don't expose ourselves the same way to the natural environment. And you're really helping us recognize that that is intrinsic in how we feel, how we heal, and how we live.
That's right. Yes, no, I agree. Thanks, Bill. No, lots of good points there. Yes. And anyone else have any questions?
Some people did mention that they're very interested in pursuing the study with you. And all the emails that were sent out, there was a link to Simon's website, and you can reach Simon through that and find out more about the course. When is it beginning again?
It's November the 8th. I'm just
So, and
putting
it's once a week, twice a week?
twice a week, 2 hours each class, and it's a year long, but with about 2 months worth of breaks, so it's 10 months of those
But if
classes.
people are working during the day, is it the West, I don't know, in North America, is it after 5 p.m. or is it always during the workday?
Uh, so one is Sunday, Thursdays and Sundays,
Ah,
and
okay.
and so the Sunday's fine. It's about lunchtime if you're or morning if you're in the West Coast, And then the Thursday, if you're working out of your own home, you would probably have to look at the recording instead. We have one-to-one tutorials, so I do have some people who just watch the recordings, but then we arrange tutorials every month so I can see how they're getting on and help them with their projects and so on. Sylvie, you have your hand up. You're muted.
Thank
Can you
you.
unmute yourself? Yeah, there you go.
Yes. My father died in 1962 in the month of October, and my maternal grandfather died also in the month of October back in 1925 when my mother was 3. So October is a very hard month in my family. And I've had wonderful experience in the past with Feng Shui consultations in both my home and the home of my oldest daughter on behalf of my granddaughters. And I'm curious to know at this time of year, besides bringing in healthy energy from the north of my home, what can I do to make this a less oppressive month?
Well, so this October energy, we're coming into we're in the metal time, we could say, and that can be associated with our ancestors. There's two metal energies, two trigrams. The second one, which we're coming closer to, is the heavens, which would be your particularly the male ancestors, grandfather, and so on. The opposite is fire. So often you find that, in churches people are burning candles and things, and in the East incense. In India, fire's a sort of it's the mover, I think, of the spirit. If I've understood how they've explained it to me correctly. So I would try candles, if you like incense. I would but fire can also be fresh flowers, it could be colors, it could be some sort of brightness, whether so it's in the north part of your home, is it?
Mhm.
So yeah, so you probably have to use more artificial light or candles to get that brightness there. Uh, but try to keep it fairly open so that chi can move easily. I
Uh,
guess the last thing you want in those situations is dark and damp. When I was a child, we used to go to endless sort of big castles in Wales and other places. But, if you ever wanted to make a horror film, that's ideal. These big, thick walls, tiny windows, all very dark and damp and cold. Um, and so we want the opposite. I think visiting to, I think you've been to Japan too, I think you said before, but those rooms with tatami mats and it's all very light and paper screens. It's almost the opposite. It would be hard to set a ghost film in those rooms. So I would sort of move in that direction as much as you can. Um,
okay, I'm going to do more decluttering, more
mm,
cleaning, bring in fresh flowers, bring in
yeah,
fire, more
yeah,
candles,
exactly.
beeswax candles. Okay, this is good. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes. I mean, I think Bill's right. We're standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. Literally, we wouldn't be here without them. But maybe we wouldn't have had the start in life that we did have, for better or worse, without them. And the qualities that we have innately, come through the generations before. So I think another thing to do is to try and think some things I feel like I've learnt or I've become through my lifetime, studying macrobiotics, I became a different person than I was before, etc. But I have other qualities that I kind of feel like were always there from the beginning. And those I would have to give credit to my ancestors for and appreciate with them. But I could write those, if I was in your situation, I think I would write them down and put them on the wall somewhere that I could see. and make even a little shrine of it. You know, you could have photographs of your ancestors, the attributes that you have that you think you got from them, plus the candles and fresh flowers, and try and make that a special part of your home that honors the history behind you.
Do you
Okay,
mind
thank you.
if Bill Spear had a couple comments about that also? Is that okay, Simon?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Sylvia, you probably not recognize this little guy, but that's me when I was 5 years old.
That's great.
Now,
And
the reason I say
what year was that?
1954. I'm 76.
See, I was 5 in 1950.
Okay, so
I just turned 80.
all right. Well, you're my elder, so let me, with respect, give you one other suggestion. My father is still here,
Oh,
not
so
in his
is my father.
body.
He
Okay,
always wants me to come over.
right. So this picture, he would remember how happy I was on my tricycle. So my recommendation instead, or in addition to flowers or incense or candles, is for you to place a picture of you at a very young age in a way that would make your father smile and feel warmly loving. A picture of you.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's
Y-
nice.
y- you got muted, Sylvia, so we didn't hear what you said. Say again, please.
My father's always here. He's
Yeah,
always inviting me to come on over. So it's a
sure.
struggle. It's a
Well,
struggle to convince him. If I waited since age 16, I can go 4 more years. We can do it. And
just
the thing about ancestry and what we inherit from our ancestors, I do think there's an element of this. It's not always positive. On my 50% Swedish side, we're very stoic. On my 50% Eastern European Jewish side, we inherit what's called melancholy. Very, 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 it's a history of persecution and so on. And so it's got a very different energy than the Viking energy from the farthest north. But
Si-
yeah, we
Excuse me,
can find both of these.
Simon, somebody asked, in terms of energetics, what about what we do some research on the house that we move into or the apartment that we move into, who lived there, who died there, who was born there? How important would you say that is in understanding the energetics of our place?
I used to do that a lot for my own places and other people's when they were moving, try and help. I think the at the beginning of that we've got to be uh, have a. I think often myself included for a long time, but lots of people I've worked with and know we have a certain attitude to death that's not very helpful. And before we go down that path, you know, about the people who died there, we probably have to explore our own attitudes to death first. Otherwise, it may end up in a sort of slightly a negative journey that might not been a good idea for the person. So, for me, like this comes up with Feng Shui. Should you ever live opposite a graveyard or a funeral home or anything like that? But if you think of death as something natural and positive, part of a cycle, then there's and you have nothing to fear from it, then the then you can go into that kind of exploration. I think in a different way. The life changes for me, and I know Bill's had a lot of experience with this, so he might want to add. I was with both my parents when they died. My father had an aneurysm, and I managed to get to the hospital whilst he was still alive. And I remember putting my hands on his head and shutting my eyes and sort of meditating and trying to heal, but having this image that there was like a city full of lights, and then the lights started to sort of slowly go out, a bit like the embers of the fire, and then after a while, you know, that sound came on in the hospital and we knew he'd gone. But it was a very sort of powerful 10 minutes or whatever it was. Similar with my mother, she was much like 2 years of decline. I was in sitting with her. She was in her bed. She'd gone to sleep, and I'd only just arrived, and then I was sitting there, and then after a while she was breathing very deeply, unusually deeply, and then just stopped, and then same thing. I realised she'd passed, but the nurse that felt that, you know, she'd waited till I got there. There was an interesting kind of atmosphere in the room. This time it wasn't in a hospital, so I think it was easier to sense the occasion and the moving on of a spirit. The reason I'm saying all this is because I'd be perfectly happy to live opposite a graveyard now after that, and I wouldn't care less if someone died in the bedroom, you know, 50 years ago or 20 years ago, because my attitude to death has changed. Prior all that, maybe I would have been nervous about it or had some negativity. So yes, I think if you're moving somewhere where there has been a history of illness and similar illnesses, it's definitely worth checking it out. Could be a pattern of divorces. What people often sell their houses when they get divorced. But if the previous people got divorced and the people before that, then it would make me kind of want to work out what was going on and see if I could correct it. Um, and in businesses, you can have a business that just keeps going bankrupt. Someone else moves in, tries to start another one, lasts a year, and then it's gone, and so on. So again, we would, if we're helping someone with Feng Shui, we'd have to look at all that and try and work out what was going on. What was
So there might be some design elements to that room, that house, that office as well, right? It's not just somebody died there or somebody was sick, but
in
how
the
the
office,
office.
in the business, it would be the location or the design. But yes, in houses and apartments, it could be more human things. What was the
Yeah.
name, William, of that person you used to work with, Elizabeth somebody?
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I forget.
Yeah. This is a two-way street. This is not whether or not we're happy and whether or not we're settled. If a house is haunted, if the previous owner is died, yes, of course, our relationship to death matters. But we can also serve those who passed before us, who reside in that house still, not just ignore it from our own experience of death. And that means, and it explains why virtually every culture has had a house cleansing process, what's called a house puja in Hindu culture, and why the Tibetan monks, the Rinpoches, on January 1st, 2000, there were 30 of them in my house who did a cleansing. The house, as far as I was concerned, I was very happy. But we have a service we can do. We can thank people for being in the house generations before us. We can let them know that we're in the house now, and we're happy, and we appreciate all they did with the garden and how they took care of the house. And we can say thank you to them. And we can also say, there's no reason for you to be here anymore. You're free to go, right? If you want to hang out, that's okay, but don't worry, right? This house is now our house. We're stewards of this house. And so you're free. You can go and enjoy the spirit world, right? And so it's a two-way street. And in some respects, I think we have some obligation to be in touch with ancestry that has been a predecessor, whether they're living or not. In a business, it's different. Business goes bankrupt. Business or a house that was occupied by a couple who divorced, or there was domestic violence. Yeah, you've got some work to do. Even if we feel kind of okay with it, there may be some vestige of the leftover of the spirit world in there. And I've done so many processes with people who've had those experiences of ghostly presences or haunts or whatever that have been transformed very easily simply by expressing gratitude and thanks to the spiritual world for the people who previously were there. We're stewards of those places, and we can speak to those people who've been there before us.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Christina, did that answer, or were you thinking of more practical? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
You're
Go ahead. You
mute.
can talk.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, so my house had people doing drugs in it prior to me. That's what I was I wanted to raise my hand, but I couldn't get it up. Instead of somebody passing in it. I mean, they may have, who knows, but I mean, there was raids and stuff like that. It was renters and all these new people came in and we've refurbished the houses and that activity is not present anymore. But that's what I was talking about. Activities that happened in the house prior.
And so there's a few ideas in Feng Shui. One is that the house doesn't really become an entity until the roof goes on. You have your walls, but without the roof, the chi's just coming and going. Once it's got the roof on, it's enclosed. So in the Flying Star system, that moment, that date, creates some astrological map of the house. But we can do that differently just by simply opening all the windows and doors, moving everything through. Not it'll be more than one day, but redecorating, taking out everything that's like curtains, carpets, everything that absorbs dust would also absorb stagnant chi. Um, Cleaning it out, if you want to redecorate it, even better because that'll change things. And then doing your own kind of rituals to refresh the energy within you and the house, to start a whole new kind of life phase together. I found that really works pretty much every time, and I think you would feel it strongly.
That's what I did. I was just wondering, all the purple walls are all gone.
Yes, good. Yeah,
And
no,
then the other quick question I have is about the kitchen. Because I do try to cook macrobiotic as much as possible. My kitchen is very small and it's not a galley kitchen, but it's walled off. So the stove has a wall and then there's a huge window, so I get plenty of light, but it's just very small to work in. And
yeah.
I don't even know what changes I could possibly make in there.
Let me just interrupt just to say that the Cushies' main dwelling in Brookline, Massachusetts, at Buckminster Road, where they lived for a long time, had a kitchen
Tiny
probably
kitchen.
smaller than yours.
Nothing.
And they nourished a lot of people and kept a lot of people healthy and happy.
I'm sure that's what I'm
So
thinking. I'm thinking there's probably nothing wrong with it. It's just in my head.
Yeah, small spaces. The plus is it contains the chi better, and you can kind of get a lot done. I think that it's often more stressful. If you think of if you were going to have a really difficult conversation with someone, you don't really want to do it in a small elevator, and you certainly don't want to do it in a car. Where everything's closed in, it's going to be more intense. If you did it on the beach or swimming in the ocean, the chances that things are going to get out of hand are very small because our chi spreads out. So knowing that, I think you could be very efficient in a small kitchen, and as Lenny was saying, and do a huge amount. But you just need to be calm. You'd have to try and keep the kitchen so that you can be efficient but calm at the same time. Not let yourself get stressed by the size of the space.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Simon and Bill and Lenny.
and
Any
and Simon, any final words? It's right now 1 minute before 2, and although, like I said, if you'd like to stay on afterwards, Simon, you don't have any obligation to. I don't know if Clara will, but whoever wants to could continue having conversations for the next 30 minutes. But Simon, we appreciate your experience and you're sharing so much with us. Is there any final words you'd like to share?
Well, I think it's really trying to develop that sensitivity and appreciation of space. I'm going to quote you here, Bill. When we think of macrobiotics and food. You know, it's chi coming into us and then sort of filling us from the inside out. When we think of Feng Shui, we're in a home, in our space, and the chi's around us and coming inside. They're both extremely powerful, but putting them together, you know, they complement each other so well, and you're getting, I think, the best of both worlds. So it's for me, it kind of, they complete each other. So I like it from that perspective. Sylvia, just to give a last question. You have your hand up.
No,
You're muted.
it was just, it's a remnant.
This is
Oh.
a comment on cleansing old spaces. When the Iharas were given the old Oroville Hospital to use for their new center, they were gifted it. Then Cornelia had all the Buddhist ceremonies to cleanse the hospital, but that only works for most people. My oldest child, when she went there in '87, she was getting terrible nightmares, and it turned out she was sleeping in an operating room, a previous operating room, and picking up on the most incredible pain and suffering. And so these cleansing, they only work so far. But on the other hand, my place was built in 1906. It was originally built as one of 3 identical homes next to each other by one man for multiple wives and a zillion children, because this is Utah. And that's what Utah was doing. And since in 1926, it was split into multiple family units before the Depression. And then so it was a 6-plex when we bought it in the 70s. So many lives had gone through here. And I can testify that there is a way of cleansing the space and making all of it peaceful, no matter who was there.
Yeah.
And it may not even require special sage burning and so on. But anyway, yeah, I've had wonderful experience with Feng Shui consultants. My brain doesn't take any of this in. I have got a very particularized kind of brain, and I only retain certain information. But I know it's a true teaching.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And again, November 2nd is our next forum, and I will do my best to resolve this issue of getting the link out when you sign up, so you can tell your friends and neighbors. We'll make this better. Thank you again, Simon. And Simon is available probably for personal consultations as well as for his year-long class that starts November 8th. And I hope many people here take advantage of it, because he's got a unique perspective and experience that he can share.
And I put my email address and website in the chat. So just send me an email and I'll explain everything and answer any questions. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the future. Hopefully be here on the 2nd as well. Who's teaching on the 2nd, Nanny?
I don't know, maybe we'll get your sister to do a cooking
Yes,
demonstration.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
talk about her experiences.
Yes.
And this session was recorded, and within a couple weeks, it'll be up on the YouTube channel. So you can let people know, if they weren't able to join us live, that it will be available in a few weeks.
And
Thanks, everyone.
I was just going to say hello to